All right, before we begin, I want to remind everyone attending this evening that the meeting is being recorded and that this room is equipped with microphones throughout that will pick up any talking. So please refrain from having sidebar discussions that you do not wish for the microphones to record. With that being said, I open the study session of July 22nd, 2024 at 6 p.m. And our first item of business is resolution number 1694, Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority Grant and Flock Safety Cameras. I call on Police Chief Maricki.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of council, public, staff. It's my opportunity tonight to present to you a unique opportunity to leverage technology through a grant by the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority to implement Flock public safety cameras in the city of Sumner. To use that technology to enhance our ability to solve, deter, and reduce crime in our community. So Deputy Chief Andy McCurdy took the lead on this. He took the initiative. He applied first to the Washington State Department of Commerce that offered a Pursuit Alternative Grant for the same technology. We were not successful in receiving funds for that grant, and then was able to pivot and apply with the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority, and we did get a grant. So we're going to propose to you tonight what that grant entails and what the technology entails, because that is the specific outcome of this grant. So Jeff could start our presentation.
So as I talk through this, again, as Chief said, it's a pretty unique opportunity. I'm going to be referencing something called ALRP or LRP technology, and that's license plate reader technology. The technology's been around for quite a while. When I worked in Covington as the chief, we had it mounted on our patrol cars. And basically the technology allows the cameras on the vehicles, or in the instance we're going to talk about today, mounted throughout the city, to register every license plate that drives by. And then it compares those license plates to different lists of vehicles that are wanted for certain crimes, like stolen vehicles, wanted for serious violent crimes, amber alerts, silver alerts, and so on and so forth. The traditional version of ALRP has been mounted on cars, and as you drive around, the officer would get an alert telling them that a vehicle had passed them that met whatever criteria was set for notification, and then that officer would have to figure out how to get around and go contact the vehicle, so on and so forth. The technology was great. The downside of it was pretty expensive because you would have to purchase the equipment to mount on the vehicle. As it would break, you'd have to buy replacements for it. So like in Covington, I purchased it with a grant. It was about $25,000 for one vehicle to be equipped, but it meant that only when that officer was working in that vehicle were we able to actually get the benefit of that technology. So as the technology has kind of evolved, there's a company that's the most prevalent one in the area now called Flock. And Flock uses that technology, but it uses it in a little bit of a different way that's proven to be very effective, particularly when you work in an area where multiple jurisdictions throughout the area kind of have a network or a web of these cameras set up. So as I walk through that, I just want to give you that little bit of an overview about what the technology is, and then we'll talk more about the specific use under this grant that we're asking for your kind of support for moving forward with. So currently, obviously every jurisdiction in Pierce County has limited police resources. We can't have a cop in every corner. Nobody could afford that, nor would we probably really want that. But when we have limited resources, so any way we can leverage technology to be a force multiplier, that much the better. Crime continues to hurt people, particularly with some of the changes in legislation that made it difficult for us to pursue vehicles and so on. I think a lot of criminals have recognized that. In 2023 in particular, Sumner had a lot of increase in robberies. Most of those robberies actually were people driving stolen vehicles, which made it hard for us to identify them after the fact. And so again, these types of crimes that are occurring are a little different than they used to be here in Sumner. And it's really important that we try to figure out what technology is going to help us with that. And then again, trust is really important as well. I think there's a lot of people who are still questioning how we as law enforcement do our jobs. There's a lot of scrutiny, a lot of much needed oversight to what we do. So anything we can do that's using technology appropriately and not running counter to people's individual liberties and rights is really important as well. So this technology I'm going to talk about with Flock technology is a force multiplier. It's actually protecting our first responders and the community through use of technology. Helps us collect and distribute this objective evidence to the right users at the right time. And it's also an opportunity for us to engage with the community to kind of use this technology to also celebrate some of our successes and gain more support for the work that we're doing. Kind of an overview, the grant itself, as Chief mentioned, is from the Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority. They typically give grants that address specific issues around auto theft. A lot of times it's about publicity campaigns and so on. And this particular equipment and technology grant was recently obtained by numerous other agencies in the area. Puyallup, Bonnie Lake are the closest neighbors, but Auburn's been using it for a number of years. And we here in Sumner, actually, I'm going to talk in a minute about a couple of cases where we use this technology to actually solve some serious crimes. So this grant is actually going to cover fiscal year 24, 25. But our goal is to actually spend the $50,000, which will cover 1 year of the system starting in January. So it would cover the calendar year 2025. And then to continue the program, we can make some decisions about whether or not we want to reduce the number of cameras, increase the number of cameras, leave it the same, or whatever may be the case with fiscal constraints that we may face. With the meetings that we've had with the vendor, one of the things that's unique about Flock technology, as I mentioned before, traditional ALRP equipment was actually where we as a municipality would purchase the equipment, have it installed, and we'd have to have a subscriber fee to access updates and different technologies surrounding it. Flock is unique in that we're leasing all the equipment, so we don't have to purchase anything. And we actually pay an annual fee per camera, and then that camera is automatically tied into the kind of that network and system of cameras throughout the region, so we can kind of do a better job of identifying issues as they come through. So with the work that we've done with Flock, with that grant amount, we anticipate we can purchase 12 cameras, and those cameras will be placed throughout the city in particular areas that we know are going to catch license plates as they enter or leave the city. And it will actually give an alert to officers working patrol when a stolen vehicle or a wanted vehicle or an Amber Alert or Sir Alert vehicle either enters or leaves our city, and tell them where that vehicle is heading in which direction, so they can kind of move into that area to intervene if it's appropriate. The other nice thing about the technology is, although we would be mounting it on light poles or other, utility type poles, it actually is a standalone unit. We don't have to tap into any of the infrastructure to actually use it. So here's kind of a picture of what the Flock cameras look like. They're solar powered cameras. Installation and ongoing maintenance, we would typically perform by the city, but if a camera breaks or something's not working, they send us a new one and we just switch them out since we don't own any of the equipment. They give us a lot of help with procuring all the hardware and so on that we would need. And then they also provide us with user training for the officers. They provide data storage and all the updates that are needed for the system. If you notice on top, it's got a solar panel, so we don't even have to mount into or attach to any of the power on the poles. Again, they kind of, their product is designed to both detect, decode, and then deliver information. So the detection occurs through their different camera systems. We're going with the Falcon. The Raven is actually used for gunshot triangulation. So it detects the sounds of gunshot and gunfire and can send officers to that area and help them figure out where the shots came from. And then the Condor is a different type of camera that would use more in buildings and so on. And then their wing would be a local control of and maintenance of the data, which we are not using either. We're going to use cloud storage that they're going to manage. The decoding part is real-time routing. It basically, as the license plates drive by, it creates what they call a vehicle fingerprint. And the vehicle fingerprint captures things like the license plate, the color of the vehicle. It actually will look at significant damage to the vehicle. Things that we later can, for one piece of the equipment actually gives us the alert if it's a identified stolen vehicle or amber or silver alert. The other nice thing about it is we can actually use it for follow-up investigations, and we can actually put in there a description of a vehicle used in a crime, and it'll go back then and check the cameras for that vehicle. So I can put in there, a red 1984 Ford Escape, or what was the vehicle before the Escape? I was trying to think of an obscure vehicle, but whatever, 1967 red Ford Mustang, and it'll tell me all the 1967 Ford Mustangs that went through the cameras during a set period of time. So again, it's nice for not just immediate decoding and delivery of that information, but also in hindsight for follow-up. We can get alerts on mobile phones. We can do it through our computer systems. There's a variety of ways that we can do that. So again, it's infrastructure free because they're maintaining all that in the back end, provides coverage 24/7, provides those real-time alerts. Again, NCIC would be hits on things like stolen vehicles, people wanted for serious crimes like homicides. NCMEC would be the Amber alerts. And then we can also create what they call custom hot lists. So if we know we have a particular person who's coming into our city to commit particular crimes, we theoretically can enter their license plate in there, and it would also give us alert when they enter the city. And again, it's not being used for facial recognition. It's not using for speed enforcement. And we're not trying to use it indiscriminately to collect evidence. It's literally just if we have an investigation, if we have a crime that occurred, we can do that check of historical data, or it gives us the alerts when specific criteria is met when the vehicle enters the area.
And one thing too is it's not video. So it's motion activated and it just takes quick 1/10 of 1 second snapshots. So it gives you the only information it captures is the license plate or lack of license plate. The vehicle make, right, it uses a signature technology, just like everybody's fingerprints unique to themselves. They use that kind of information for vehicles, including unique things that we can put in search criteria.
So some things it is, like I mentioned, it's license plate recognition technology. It does gather that objective evidence and data about vehicles, not about the people. Provides alerts on any wanted vehicles, helps solve crimes and locate people, adheres to all state laws. What it is not, it's not facial recognition, not collecting biometrics or other sensitive info. It's not used for tracking speed or parking. And the data is automatically deleted every 30 days. So typically this would be used like immediately after an event. We could search the last 30 days to see if that we can identify a vehicle, or if it's that immediate notification, we can then check to see if that vehicle showed up in other cameras to let us know where that vehicle left after it got the hit off the first camera. Again, it's proactive, it helps for investigative, and also it's a deterrent. People in the area, people out committing crimes, start to recognize when these pieces of technology are being used. And oftentimes, I mean, our goal is that they're going to go somewhere else to commit a crime if they know that we're involved in something like this. And some of the local jurisdictions like Auburn that's been using it, people know that certain major roadways in and out of the city are equipped with this technology. And the word gets out, and you do see at least crime being displaced, if not prevented. Protection of privacy is really important on this. When this technology first came out about 15 years ago, there's a lot of concern about how we were collecting information on citizens and, so on and so forth. And that's really not what's being done. There were some less reputable companies when the technology came out that were selling the data to other people, private investigators and things like that. That's not the case at all. It's being maintained for 30 days. Other than the hits that come in, we are the only ones that are able to search our database. Other partner law enforcement agencies, when they put in a license plate, they can see which other law enforcement agencies have a hit, and then they would contact us to get more information. So again, this isn't is intended to be like Big Brother watching over things. It's really about efficient use and sharing of information for specific investigations. It also requires, if I do a search for information as an officer, I need to put in a case number associated with that investigation. So I'm not doing it for improper purposes. So I think I covered all of that. Within the state of Washington, these are the agencies that currently have it. As well as I mentioned, Bonnie Lake is going to be getting it soon. Puyallup has a few portable systems they've already deployed. They've already gotten a lot of cases solved because of it. And I think that once we kind of, have that mesh throughout the area with Bonnie Lake and us coming on board, I think we're going to start to see a lot of improvement in.
You'll notice, so Yakima was first one of the early adopters, and there's a couple success stories in here from that. But a lot of those like Toppenish and Town of Hera and Union Gap, and these are small Yakima communities with very limited financial resources. And they've just had Moxie, it's my old stomping grounds where I grew up, but they've had a tremendous, because crime doesn't know borders. We know that, right? So they're in the Lower Valley and the reservation and stuff. And so this really was an effective tool to get a grasp on that. People going interjurisdictions, committing, serious offenses. And there's some success stories too that we'll share.
Any question, Ari?
So nobody could really request, like I couldn't do a public records request.
We don't have access to the data unless I put in a specific case number to search it. So if you're doing a request for public information, it would be if we owned that data, and then we would have to give it to somebody, but we don't physically possess this data. It's only when I put in a search under specific criteria, then it goes into that database to retrieve it. So, and also with 30 days retention, you would have to even that data for, requests and that search function. The metadata behind that would only be available for that 30 days because
They do have a transparency portal too,
So that-
to share
that's
information.
Okay with state law and
Yep.
everything.
Yeah. And again, because it's not data that we possess unless we do a specific search.
Okay.
So if Barbara was lost in her car driving down the road, we could give you her number and they could find her.
Story coming up.
We can, we'll tell the story. We could
It
change the
wasn't
name
Barb,
to
we changed
Barbara.
the name.
Oh.
So specifically in Yakima, they had hundreds of vehicles recovered in less than 1 year. Had 596 stolen vehicle alerts, 276 stolen vehicle license plates, 190 violent person alerts, 133 wanted people, 78 sex offenders, and 33 missing people. So I mean, those are staggering numbers. And you think about specifically somewhere like Sumner, we have a lot of traffic in and through the city and around the city that's not necessarily even doing its business here. So, this is a really great location to kind of share information with our partner agencies and hopefully solve or prevent some of these violent crimes. Tukwila had one of their success stories. I mean, 3 arrests on 3 vehicles and recovered in 1 day. Again, just one example, they received an alert on a stolen vehicle in the area. They located the vehicle as they approached another suspect in a separate stolen vehicle, tried to flee, and they recovered that one a short time later. So, 1 hit on a vehicle ends up in 2 recoveries. They continued with their original traffic stop, assisting the suspect who had fentanyl, meth, and then they recovered the stolen car. And then later that day, they got another alert on the same parking lot. I'm guessing, I don't Tukwila, I've never worked in Tukwila. I'm assuming some of this may have had to do with South Center Mall.
Big mall.
But, yeah.
And we borrowed a camera from the Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force and put it out at the entrance to our 2 hotels off 24th Street. Because what we were seeing was that visitors did dump a stolen and steal a car. And so that was where our officers had access to the app on their phone. They'd get a ping alert when a stolen vehicle entered into the parking lot. We knew likely based on this trend what was going to transpire. So the idea was to try to have a reduction of those events. And so there's so many different versatile applications. Here's one in a park.
Yeah, so this is Spokane County Sheriff's Department and Liberty Lake Police Department. Responded to reports of an assault. The victim told the authorities that an unidentified male had attacked her before fleeing in a vehicle. They checked their flock system and identified the suspect vehicle. Also identified the registered owner who matched the description of that given by the victim. Able to locate him the following day and charged with 2nd-degree assault. So just kind of one example. One of the Sumner cases that we had was actually working with Tukwila PD. Once we're a member of Flock, we actually have access to their database and can start to do searches and can find out if a particular vehicle has been in other jurisdictions. We've actually had 2, and I'll briefly tell you about both. One of them, we had a case where there was a wedding up in Buckley. A couple of people who didn't know each other but attended the same weddings were both heading back to the Tukwila area. So one guy offered the other guy a ride. As they were coming down, they got a fight over which sports team was better. They pulled off of Highway 410 in the city of Sumner, and the driver got out and shot the passenger in the chest. Officers got there, applied life-saving measures. They transported him to the hospital. He provided a description and a nickname of the driver. The vehicle registration did not match the description or name of the driver. So our detectives started doing an investigation to figure out the vehicle was registered in the area around Tukwila, but they actually contacted Tukwila Police Department, and the vehicle had been hit numerous times in one particular parking lot. So we went up there, we located the vehicle. It was actually at the place of work for the guy who ended up being the suspect. And he was actually a relative's vehicle he had been driving. So rather than tip off the relative by knocking on the door and being like, hey, who's driving your car? We were able to actually go confront him and end up arresting him for attempted murder. So again, this is another example of where technology can be used for good. despite what some of us may believe the way things are in our society at the time. So we had a second one I'll mention briefly as well. We had our Winco shooting when they carjacked that vehicle. We reached out to other agencies the next day, and Kent actually had the vehicle hit on Central Avenue driving north through Kent. And that helped us try to figure out where the suspect actually had come from. And that was one of the little pieces that we used to try to put that case together, and ultimately arrested both the suspects on that one as well. And again, this was an example in an 87-year-old woman went missing after departing her residence. They had got a silver alert hit on the vehicle the same day, for 15 minutes after she was reported missing. We're able to safely return her to her family. So, and then a child abduction as well. Amber Alert was issued at 12:30. They conducted a flock check at 1:01, located suspect vehicle an hour and a half later at 2:30 p.m. We're able to find the vehicle and conducted a felony stop and made an arrest at 5:03 and reunited the abducted child with the parent at 6 o'clock. So 5.5 hours of work. Traditionally on child abduction cases, it can take a long time, and those are take a lot of manpower to investigate. Using this technology can really help a lot. So again, as I mentioned, we're hoping to deploy 12 cameras. This is going to include software subscription, data storage, as well as the equipment itself. Initial term is 12 months prepaid with that grant. And then years after that will be about $39,000 a year if we continue with the same number of cameras. The nice thing about also leasing the cameras is if we decide to go down to 10 cameras or increase it to 100 cameras, it's all about how much money is available in the budget and how we can work that in. So again, 100% of the first month's prepaid up front. And then again, it's only ongoing if we choose to make it so. So next step, we're asking if you're willing to approve our acceptance of the WAPTA grant by this resolution. We then would execute a grant document with the grantor. We'd adopt the policies as well as do some engagement and feedback from stakeholders. Then if council authorized that master service agreement with Flock Safety, we would do a final design, setup, implementation, and training. And then we'd use the cameras for at least starting in January 1st through the end of the year. That's all I got. Happy to answer questions or.
Yes. Great presentation. It seems like a great use of automation. So is there any reason why you would think we wouldn't do this?
Cost. I mean, I know that at the end of the day, doing something like this for 1 year, we could start to do a little bit of a study to figure out what it's worth, right? I believe that the vendor has addressed my concerns about privacy and safety and so on. But invest in a grant like this, not knowing if it's going to really bear much fruit, there would be kind of an expectation built that we would continue it for officers and the public. And if we don't have the funds to do so, that can kind of create some disappointment, especially if it bears a lot of fruit. So,
but it has been, this technology's been around for a while. What's improved vastly is the ability to run a solar powered camera 24 hours a day and transmit it through LTE completely, they say infrastructure free. It just had a post in the ground, right? It's going to be a little more secure than that, but so that technology's evolved. The cost of the technology's come down, and we've seen success in other neighboring jurisdictions. On that list, I added, those that had it and then to come. So Bonnie Lake got a grant, Gig Harbor got the same grant we did. Puyallup has been using it, Lakewood, our neighbors to the north, Auburn, Pacific. So we're going to have basically East Pierce County pretty well covered as far as exchanging information. Right, we have constantly, I see bulletins we call BOLOs, be on the lookout for it, right? And the private sectors embrace this technology too, your big box stores, your Lowe's, stuff like that, for ingress and egress out of their parking areas. But they get photos of a vehicle that was involved in a particularly large retail theft. That's all we know. And so now that would be something that could be inputted here, and we'd be able to, that vehicle gets tracked. So there's a lot of good technology. This is a very limited, this is very clear, WAPTA. This is a one-time grant. Their priority is funding task forces, auto theft task forces. So this gives us the unique opportunity to, it's a very simple one-page agreement. There's not a lot of strings attached. We have to report our auto theft numbers to them every 6 months for 1 year. Actually, just when we seek reimbursement. They're allowing us to prepay the program that covers all the upfront setup fees, about $5,000 worth of back-end setup fees. And then it gives us an opportunity to have 12 months of experience. I particularly timed it so that we do be deliberate, take our time, and then have the grant fund all of 25 as we're entering into the budget process. And then I'll request through the budget process, continued funding for 2026. Of course, that's again up to council, and it's flexible. We're not tied to that. As far as with Flock, we're going to enter into a 12-month agreement. We're going to prepay it using grant funds, and then we have a year 2 option at a fixed rate. So I see there's a lot of advantages and very little disadvantages.
Jason,
Sorry.
are we, can they give their opinions tonight, or does this have to come back?
It does have to come back because you need to formally accept the grant, and then the master services agreement will likely be just done administratively. So yeah, if you have any concerns, that's really what we want to hear tonight, so we can make sure that we're prepared to answer those. Or if you think it's great, we'd love to hear that too.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And I just have one question, and it is about educating the public. Is that part of, will that be part of the process so that they're aware that the system exists?
Yeah, one, for 2 reasons. One, I think it's deterrent for people to know, right? If there's the bad side of Big Brother always watching, and then there's the good side of being watched, and that a lot of people are gonna behave more if they know that they may be caught, right? The other side of it though is under this program, we can also have local businesses that have other branded surveillance systems on their property that can also subscribe, and their data would then be accessible to us as well. So, you know, they purchase cameras from another vendor. It's also cloud-based that can actually, Flock can actually create a contract with them for that data. So that would be the 2 pieces of the community outreach. One, to just let people know it exists, and then the second of it to try to get more of our local businesses to subscribe.
Very good, thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I just was curious, so what other costs could the city incur from this? Like if there's vandalism on the equipment, I know it's leased, but is there any other costs that could be associated with something like that?
No, they do a pretty good job of just, if something's not working on the camera, whether it was vandalism or their camera equipment didn't work anymore, we send it back, they send us a new one. And there's no cost for that. The only other expenditure would be city staff time for installation, because we actually will have a city staff member who will go on the pole and actually mount it on there. And there are a couple of them that are gonna be on their own pole that we're gonna mount. So that staff time would be the only.
So 7 would be on city light poles or traffic signal poles, and then 5 would be on Flock poles.
Okay. And then liability is always an issue nowadays. So how does liability work if something goes wrong? If somebody's data gets taken and it gets misplaced or broken into, is the city responsible for that, or is Flock responsible? How does that work?
But they use encrypted cloud storage, and part of that language, Andrew is reviewing the master services agreement that Flock sent us. So it's currently undergoing review. I know she's collaborating with other cities that use the product, so we can, you know, share alike and trade, exchange ideas. So that's being looked into by our legal department.
The other thing is the cameras are only collecting and analyzing publicly visible data.
Yeah.
So the individual
All the things
data for that
anybody
person.
can see out on the street.
So it would be the license plate number. The comparison of that plate to that hot list also does not give them information. So I'll give you an example of what we would get. So we would get notification that a vehicle with a particular license plate that's been reported stolen has entered our city at a particular camera heading in a certain direction. Our officers then would have to access the CJIS database to check that plate to find out more information about like where the vehicle was stolen from and so on. So that data, that's the personal information, is not collected by the system at all. It's literally just the fact that this license plate on this car entered our city at a particular time.
So the systems that Chief first referenced with the vehicle mounted ALPR, those were actually tied to our state access system, DOL, our WASIC, which is our Washington Crime Information Center. And so it would actually run a plate and have data about the registered owner and is there, this has nothing. This has red Chevy Camaro with this license plate. Doesn't know, doesn't take pictures of drivers, it doesn't. They only get vehicles as they're going away, so they only, way on that map that explained the grant where the 12 cameras are actual this recommended placement. Because it only captures data, can't capture two-way data, just captures vehicles going away, so we'd have 2 cameras in some location like East Valley, so we can capture vehicles coming and going out of the city. And that's the idea, is we just want to know if a crime is, if a stolen vehicle is coming in, our officers could be poised to take action on that, whatever that action might look like, right? Or if a suspect, somebody that commits a crime and Sumner left at a certain point in time, that's useful for our investigations as well, but we don't know any, like I said, it's not capturing the whole data. And it's all hard deleted after 30 days.
Thank you.
Just one comment.
Okay.
Thanks again. Personally, I really like it. So I know it has to come back, but I think it's gonna be a really good thing to bring into the city. I think it's a good time to start exploring it, so I like it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
So who does the outreach to the businesses? Is
Uh,
that
so-
Flock or is it the city?
No, it would be us. So we would work with Carmen to kind of share that information, and we'd work through other like Sumner Main Street Association, Rotary, or the other groups where businesses attend and make them aware of the technology and how they could participate and so on.
Okay, right.
So we'd be managing that. They give us a lot of the materials that we could use, but and then again, we don't benefit at all from them subscribing. It's just
Just
data.
an extra. But I think it's a great idea.
Okay, Kurt, are you good? Good, okay. Great.
I just got a quick question on so these are just 12 fixed cameras, not bringing any patrol cars, right?
No, correct.
So how do they get notified when there's, let's say, a hit or something? Do they go through dispatch?
Typically through an app,
Okay, it'll be on their patrol car then, or on
their work phone.
okay, so they'll get it real time.
Yeah, and you can set parameters. So like if I'm not working at night, I can turn the alerts off. It's only the officers or days of the week. So officers, when they're working, will just turn on the app, have it running throughout shift, and they get the notification right there. And it actually sends you a picture of the rear of the vehicle. So that would help you with verification. One of the concerns I always have with this is, especially younger officers who aren't as experienced, they may get that alert, get excited, and then go make a stop, and there was 1 digit off, right? The computer misread it. So this actually sends you on your app, it sends you the photo that it took, that license plate, you confirm the license plate, you run it, make sure, confirm that it's stolen before you initiate any kind of contact.
Right. Pat?
Yeah, I like it too. I'm just looking forward to how you're gonna weave it into the 26 budget.
So let's put in your packet is the resolution 1694. We've got it set for council's consideration on the August 5th regular council meeting. Also attached to the 2-page grant acceptance agreement, if you want to peruse that, and we'll revisit it on August 5th.
One more question, Andy.
I was just curious, is there like, somewhere like a big parking lot, you mentioned a couple places that maybe isn't one of the areas that was where the 12 cameras are, is there like, we were reaching out to the public, but is like a business like a Fred Meyer parking lot, which is a big area in town, would they have the opportunity to reach out and say, hey, can you put a camera here? And
They, as I mentioned, they could subscribe their camera system they already have to Flock. And so it doesn't have to be a Flock owned camera to be able to use the same technology.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm sure Flock would be happy to sell them a camera as well.
Yes.
All right. Did you get what you needed?
Thank you.
All right, okay, guys. Okay, we're moving on to second item, Heritage Park remediation update, and I call on Public Works Director, City Engineer Alisa Javier Ayala. How'd I do? I'm getting there. It's long.
Real quick before Lisa starts, well, brings up the presentation. For the public that's here, there is some handouts on the table, because I know the maps can be pretty hard when you're reading them on the screen, and council, you have them on the dial.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I'm Elisa O'Haver Ayala, Deputy Public Works Director of Engineering and City Engineer. And here to talk to you tonight about Sumner Texas Cove Heritage Park remediation. Heritage Park, Block West, bounded by Kincaid, Cherry, and Maple, just south of Maine. Was at Public Works Committee a couple months ago, and we were talking about contamination elsewhere in the city. And I realized about half of you were new since we last came to council and talked about this. And so it definitely deserved an update to let you all know about this ongoing effort. So a little background. Since at least 1944 to the 1990s, Heritage Park was used as a gas station. In 1990, we know that Tacoma Pierce County Health Department issued a permit for the removal of underground storage tanks at the gas station, which are in the vicinity of the current gazebo. 1994, the city purchased the property for Heritage Park, which was later renamed Reuben Knobloch Heritage Park. And since then, we have performed various studies in 2010, 2011, and 2022. So why focus on Heritage Park? The public engagement process for Main Street Vision in 2021 identified the redevelopment of Heritage Park as priority number 1. So in 2022, as we were going through the effort of the Town Center Utility and Woolnorth project, we wanted to make sure before we paved all of that over with stamped and colored concrete, that we did what we could to address that preliminary, to make sure that we weren't tying our own hands there by paving it over. So we did make an effort there before doing that project. And then we're continuing to work because we know that the redevelopment and the redesign for Heritage Park is happening this year with the hopes of getting grant money to start building some of that next year. So to date, what have we done? In 2022, we hired PBS Engineering and Environmental. They took a variety of soil samples, groundwater samples, and installed 5 monitoring wells. In October of 2022, I came to council, and some of you may recall the slide that's on the right that shows the red line, and that's at that point what we knew about the extents of contamination. And the south was not closed in, which was a requirement that we needed to fix. So we proceeded after that to do remedial injections, which was our path forward. And remedial injections is essentially what the picture on the left looks like. It's a drill rig that injects water that's combined with carbon and microorganisms into the soil and the groundwater. The carbon traps the contamination. The microorganisms essentially eat it. So we did that. We did a pilot test near the gazebo. And then we proceeded to do a remedial injection reactive barrier across Cherry Avenue, which is a series of injections to the soil and the groundwater that injected these organisms in, and then they would be swept south along Cherry with the groundwater. In addition to that, in 2023, they also installed an additional monitoring well further south on Cherry, 2 soil vapor sampling wells on Cherry, and they did quarterly groundwater monitoring. These graphs you should have on the dais and as well over on the table. So I'm an engineer, I like graphs. So this is the progress of our contamination. The orange is gasoline and the green is benzene. At the bottom, you'll see a dotted line. That dotted line shows the cleanup level for unrestricted land use. We want all of our lines to be under that. Currently, with our latest sampling, we have the gasoline at or near that CUL level. The benzene is a little bit more erratic. Monitoring well 2, which is near the gazebo, is under that. Monitoring well 4 is further south on Cherry. And that one is the one that's still variable but trending down. So this map shows the comparison of 2022 to our most recent in 2024. So So you'll see it has shrunk and we have closed that south end with the additional monitoring well. This is, it's looking good. It's looking better than it did before. Let me go back to this one. This is, so what this shows is the limits of benzene. The reason why that's important to distinguish is because there, it is one distinct compound within our contamination. But our contamination is not the only contamination in the area. The Sounder Square property where Sugar Babies, Goodwill Blue, and Eternal Soul also has their own contamination, and they have been very cooperative and collaborative with us and shared their information with us so that we could see a bigger picture. Why benzene is important is because benzene is unique to our contamination. There is no contamination, there's no benzene from the Sounder Square property. So it was good to for our teams to work together and make that distinction and for us to be able to define that. Because we now know working with our consultant PBS and having conversations with the Department of Ecology that these two contaminations are commingled and cannot be separated from ecology. So we can't resolve ours without them fixing theirs, and they can't fix theirs without us fixing ours. They're linked. So we are continuing to work with them, and they're being collaborative with that. This shows Department of Ecology's full process. When we came here before, we had finished our site hazard assessment and we were working through remedial investigation. And that's where we still are. Over the past year and a half, we've jumped over to the right to where the red star is, and we've been doing interim actions. Those are the remedial injections in order to get that contamination defined. So now that we have that and we have the records, we have a year's worth of sampling, we can submit to ecology. So that's what we are currently working to get accomplished this month. And then we can continue to move through the feasibility, cleanup action plan, and all the rest of the steps. So next steps, we're intending this month to submit for the remedial investigation to ecology along with the voluntary cleanup plan. Later this year, we will hear back from them and submit our feasibility study. And then we will continue over the next couple years to work with DOE and Tacoma Pierce County Health Department to develop, design, and implement the cleanup action plan. This is our total approximate cost. To date, we've spent about $250,000 of that $290 that's been allocated. The number shown below, we initially said it's going to be about $1 million, and it's still trending that way. In addition, we are continuing to pursue grants for this because there are grants available, especially for government agencies that are pursuing this kind of remediation work. And like I said, we are continuing to look forward and trying to accomplish this ahead of Heritage Park redevelopment. So a little teaser there, but any questions?
Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That's a great presentation. So looks like this is just kind of my interpretation of what you just shared with us because you're an engineer and I'm not. So all the appropriate actions have been and are being taken. And so what does the final cleanup plan look like? What would that consist of?
More remedial injections.
Okay.
That is what we suspect, and we can do that. We can do that in the park. We can do that on neighboring properties with their permission. If we need to, we can drill through Cherry Avenue and pour it back. But we shouldn't need to. We should be able to do it in adjacent properties. If we need to do some targeted digging, if there's just a concentrated pocket, we can do that, but we don't expect to.
Okay, and then what is the other contamination from Sounder Square?
They also had, there used to be a Ford dealership there.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody?
I'm curious, what's the time frame? Do you have an estimate? Another
It-
years?
It is
It's been like 30. 35.
I think at this point, we're hoping, in the 2028 timeframe, that we'll have a no further action.
And you think we'll stay in the $1 million range?
Sure hope so.
Think I'll still be alive.
I sure hope so.
Anybody else?
Can I just add one thing, Mayor? Obviously, the city's owned this property since the mid-90s. We've known about the contamination the entire time almost. That's why you saw studies done in 2010, 2011, and that was a conscious decision to see how much of this would naturally, resolve itself, because these do eventually resolve themselves. And it's been something that we've continued to monitor. And it's time that we have to do something. We can't just continue to kick the can. So that's why Elisa started working on it in haste in 2022. And that's why we're going to continue to push through this process. So just to kind of answer the question of why haven't we not done anything in 30 years?
All right.
So, we have, our dealerships, are they required to be taking care of some of these problems? Currently, I mean, I know it's not this project at all, but like you got Sunset. So in 50 years, is the city gonna have to, be dealing with it or?
My understanding is the property owners are responsible for it. The city is not responsible for contamination on private property.
Yeah.
That lies with the property owner. Now, we bought Heritage Park. We have
Right.
bought other contaminated properties. And when we do that, sometimes there is an acceptance of that risk.
I just hope that the dealerships are taking care of it.
Me too.
Instead of
It's the
later.
responsible thing to do, but
Yeah,
it is their property.
right. Okay.
All right. Kurt, did you have it? Are you good? You good? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our last thing on the agenda, resolution number 1695, City Council Rules of Procedure. I will call on Jason Wilson and Andrea Marquez.
Thank you, Mayor. As Jeff pulled up the presentation, I'll let Andrew introduce her.
I am pleased to introduce all of you to our new Deputy City Attorney, Doug Ruth. Doug has been working for local jurisdictions for many years, and he comes to us from the city of Auburn. And today's his very first day, so he's getting initiated with a long Monday. So welcome, Doug. Okay, we are here tonight. Every year or so, every couple of years at least, it's important to revisit the council's rules of procedure. These are the rules that you all adopt that govern these council meetings. And I've got the ticker here. I'm going to start at a really high 10,000 foot level, talk generally about city council meetings and what is allowed and what is not allowed. So council meetings generally are limited public forums. Courts have made that determination because they are business meetings of the elected officials. They are business meetings of the city council. They are not meetings of public like a town hall might be expected to be. So because they are limited public forums, council is permitted to establish and adopt rules of conduct and rules of decorum to ensure that they are orderly meetings, that the business can be conducted, and that they are there are guardrails in place. The rules are permitted to implement reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. Those are content neutral rules that regulate conduct and the decorum in the meetings. So what are time, place, and manner restrictions? Examples are things like putting limitations on public comment, putting the public comment section of the public's participation in a meeting in a particular place on the agenda. and other procedural rules that don't get to the content of public engagement, but get to the conduct. So currently, our city council rules provide 3 minutes per person. In addition to commenting at regular council meetings, the public is always welcome to call, email their elected officials and staff, and they can testify both orally via Zoom and in person at meetings. What we have noticed, what many local jurisdictions nationwide have noticed in the last several years, is an uptick in disturbing behavior that has now been coined Zoom bombing. And what is happening is people are calling in. We have been subject to this in at least one of our regular council meetings, and our planning commission has also experienced this. Members of the public are calling. They may or may not even reside in Washington state. They may or may not even know where Sumner, Washington is. And they call to spew racist or hateful rhetoric that can be disturbing to certain audiences. And it is protected speech by and large, with very limited exceptions. It is protected by the First Amendment. And so this is not about stopping protected speech. It's about putting guardrails on it to hopefully limit the disruption that it can cause at meetings. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides tonight. This is a general list of options. These are ways that other jurisdictions have limited Zoom bombing. It is intended to dissuade this type of behavior. It is not intended to limit or get at well-intentioned members of our public who show up on Mondays and speak to their elected officials. And I want to make that very clear. This is really intended to limit the behavior that is disruptive to the council's business. So option 1 is currently the council rules permit 3 minutes per speaker. And we have seen some jurisdictions limit that time, or some jurisdictions have 5 minutes. What I want to point out is that 3 minutes is really by and large the rule and not the exception. So as I go through these slides, I welcome your questions. I welcome your feedback, because all of these are on the table. There really isn't any one of these options that we think is better than any other. And so we're here tonight to get feedback on each of them. Anybody have any?
I'll just say something real quick.
Okay, great, go ahead.
Just on the time limit stuff, I know, because I don't know, for me, I watch a lot of council meetings, different cities, Tacoma, Peel, Green, DuPont, everybody, and they're all vary from 1:30 to 3 minutes. So they're all out there, different time frames. Like City Tacoma, which is a big city, they're in 2 minutes, but some of them are 1:30, I noticed, and they're doing the same kind of thing. So just, I guess, keep it in mind, everybody's kind of doing this right now. And they vary from, like I say, 1:30 up to 3. I don't see too many over 3 minutes anymore for comments. And that's Zoom or in person, in the chambers, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Ranky. That's true. A lot of jurisdictions are revisiting their rules to talk about this time limitation. The last piece of this slide that I haven't mentioned yet is that some jurisdictions are not limiting each speaker's time, but rather limiting, well, they still put a time limit on each speaker, but they also limit public comment in general. And it is not to exceed 30 minutes. And that is in the order that folks sign up, as many people that can speak at that meeting are welcome to, but this is really to continue the orderly conduct of the council's business. There are meetings in some jurisdictions that go on for hours and hours and hours, and you lose the attention of your audience, you lose the attention of your council members, and it's really just not a good way to conduct business.
Go ahead. I think the 3 minutes that we're at right now, for me personally, I think that's more than adequate. I think that if somebody's going to speak, that it will encourage them to get to the point that they're trying to make versus the run, you know, that a lot of people can create. And I think that it allows people to get up there and say what they need to say. Certainly would not increase it. That would be my put. And I agree. I think that it's probably generous based on what Councilman Rinke is saying. I too have watched some of the other city council meetings, so I think that, to me, the 3 minutes is good. It allows people to say what they have to say. I don't know that I would limit it to 30 minutes total overall, because I do think it's good to give people the opportunity to speak, personally.
Anybody else? Pat?
I agree with exactly. Councilman Bowman.
I would just say, I agree with the 3 minutes. I would be open to something. I think 30 minutes is probably short. I think there's some issues that you get a lot of people. If it was something where it started to be excessive, like maybe 60 minutes, I think maybe I'd be more in support of that, because that becomes a pretty long time. I think if it was 30 minutes every week, maybe we talk about it, but I feel like the way things are, there's like probably 1 or 2 issues a year where you have people that would speak. If it gets longer than an hour, I might be interested in that. Anyway, but 3 minutes is fine with me.
One thing I should point out is that the current version of the council's rules also gives the council and the mayor discretion to reduce from 3 minutes to 2 minutes if there is a ton of interest in speaking that evening, so that it allows everyone to be heard, but it reduces their time. So that issue is quasi addressed already in our rules, but if council's interested in that 1 hour cutoff, we could suggest some language.
And similarly, you can always vote to suspend your rules and make a time limit of 60 minutes if you see that needed that night. It's not, doesn't have to be in the written rules. There's always ways to suspend your rules if necessary.
I think I like that better than putting it in the rules with 60 minutes. I like it. I didn't, if there's other options that are more flexible, I prefer that.
Okay.
I like that we can be flexible, but I also agree with, I like the 3 minutes, but I would think that 30 minutes is too short. And so if we could do it for an hour, that'd be great. But now we know that we have flexibility. So why not say an hour? But we know we have additional flexibility built in if we needed it.
Right.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, I agree. An hour to me, if I was listening, I know for myself, probably after 30 minutes, I might not be hearing what a person says, even though they have a good point, but you know, there's kind of a limit to how much you can take in at a meeting. So I would say an hour would be the maximum I could ever see.
Anybody else?
I'll just say, I'm good with the 3 minutes also, but I do think it depends on the subject matter, obviously. If it's a hot button issue for your city, it's obviously a lot of people are gonna comment. And just an example, the Tacoma recently, they just had charter review, we had 24 amendments on there until almost midnight, one council meeting, to let everybody talk. So, I mean, those things can happen. I don't think it's gonna probably happen here, but I mean, I think 3 minutes is adequate for somebody to make their case or state their opinion on an issue that's going on in the city. And I don't know if it's been a problem in the past or not, but from what I've seen, it hasn't been, so I'm good with that.
You get what you needed?
Yes, thank you for that feedback.
Okay.
Option number 2, jurisdictions across our state have been editing their council rules to prohibit comments that are not related to city business or matters that pertain to the city's jurisdiction. Examples might be the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Other examples might be the Ukraine and Russian war. The city of Sumner doesn't have a whole lot of impact or effect on those types of global issues. And so it's just the rule is intended to keep people focused. If you wish to come speak with your elected officials, keep it to city business.
So you want feedback on?
Yeah,
whether they want
The
that?
options are really just are intended to generate discussion if council's interested or not.
Okay, Pat?
I had to look up Germain
Mhm.
and I saw that it was really vast and large as many times it went to court. So I do like that terminology to keep it to city business, which is really broad with that term, but it's city business. So I like that.
I agree. I agree with what Councilmember Thurgott just said. I think just keeping it contained, it's critical so that we can maintain the business that we need to maintain.
So
Thanks.
that proposed language up there, am I hearing that you both
I do.
are in support of that? Okay.
Yes. Andy?
Okay.
I think as long as we aren't too strict, I think I'm okay with it. I think there are times where bigger issues like a state mandate will affect city business. And there's sometimes bigger policy level things will affect local issues. And I think it's important to give leeway to a speaker to make sure that if they're tying it into city business, that we give them some room to do that. I think if we're too restrictive, I could see that being problematic.
No. I mean, I can't really quite figure out, I was looking through, the packet to figure out if this was really related to, what we have here on page 39. Seems a little different, but I just want to make sure that we don't miss covering that, and that really is about the blue section. It talks about who the public comment benefits. We have that pointed out in an email, and so I really wanted to address it because I thought it was a good point. And it really was, I think it was Mr. Adams that pointed out that, well, the way it read, but I think if we modify that a little bit, I think it'll read, as it is intended to be read, which is, if you're here to comment, then the comment is for the council and not to, gain support for whatever your particular topic is. I think that's just sort of saying that. And I think that's what this is saying. And I think you can say it easier by saying, the public comment is for the benefit of the council members and is not provided as an opportunity for the speaker to inform or educate the community. That way, to me, I think it's clearer. And then and I think that that's what everyone wants. We don't want someone who's coming to speak to others in the public and not us directly.
Okay.
So if somebody does get off topic, who's the one that will stop them? Because it's very hard, to say, okay, thank you, your time is up. How do you stop somebody if they do have an agenda that's not related to the city? Is
Well,
that
if it's
something you-
disruptive and if it's worth gaveling, the mayor presides over council meetings. And
Okay.
according to Robert's rules, she maintains the order of the meeting. So if appropriate, it would be in consultation with staff if it's very fact specific, all of this.
Yeah,
But if it's disruptive and it violates the rules, it would certainly be the mayor that could gavel it. And
and would you
Yeah.
come and like advise her
I
during
could,
that?
I could.
Okay, well, then, because I
I'm
just
sitting
know
right
it'd be
there.
difficult. Well, it'd be a difficult situation. But
Especially as the mayor though.
Yeah. that's right.
The idea here is that if speech or public comment is disruptive and it does get out of hand and it's so off topic that it's just unnecessary for the business of the city, that you have rules in place that you can enforce if it's appropriate. Without these rules,
Then they can,
exactly right.
all right.
Councilmember Rankin.
I'll say, I'm not opposed to it. I think to keep on track and keep things moving, it's a good idea. There's, people that can get off the rails and go sideways on a lot of things. So, and it happens quite often. And I've seen meetings where, the chairman of Pierce County Council, Ryan Miller, he's actually got people
That's
holding it
good.
in. And the city of Tacoma mayor has too. So, I mean, it does happen. And I think just to keep, things on track and keep things going, it's pertaining to city business at the time what we're talking about. Because people will go off track on stuff and go off on tangents of things that sometimes the city has no control. just they want to make their point heard for some reason. I'm not opposed to having some kind of language to regulate that. Thank you.
And recall that this is really to address this uptick in inappropriate virtual attendees making comments. So limiting it to 3 minutes, only really have to listen to uncomfortable things for 3 minutes. And then prohibiting comments that are not related to city business. A lot of these Zoom bombers are calling about issues that don't pertain to Sumner.
Right, so this doesn't take in somebody at the dais?
Oh, it could. There are
It
cases
does
galore
do-
nationwide about disruptive public comment that's irrelevant to city business. It gets to the point where it is, it really does disrupt the meeting. And so there needs to be rules in place to address both. But a lot of these jurisdictions are making these rule changes mostly to address virtual public comment issues.
And 3 minutes doesn't sound very long, but sometimes when you're listening to it, it's like, oh, when's it gonna end? So.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, in my mind, I know something occurred in this last year here, but it's more of an exception than the rule in this city today. So what this does though, is if and when it occurs, to your point, it gives some boundaries
Right.
and the ability to take some action. So I think that's the key, because you just stated that, is that really this is just a way to get in front of that. So if it does occur, or if people think they're gonna make it a regular activity in our city council meetings, we have some actual guidelines that say it's not allowed and we can take action. So that's my interpretation. So am I correct in that
Yes, you are
interpretation?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
And while we have not experienced this type of activity as much as some of our neighbors or cities across the state, we have experienced it more than many. So don't really understand how it all works and which cities or which public agencies get chosen, but having rules to address it is really important. Option number 3, prohibit remote public comment entirely. And then there are a couple subsets that jurisdictions have used that are similar to prohibiting it. You require people to come in person, or if you are going to allow remote public comment to continue, you require advanced registration 24 hours in advance. You require the camera to be on if you wish to speak, and you require a full name and address before beginning. Bad actors don't tend to want to comply with these types of conduct regulators.
So, I mean, with the public comments that are given here, how much of the address needs to be given? Because quite often it's, very, like just the street, or it's just, maybe the town, and they don't really, is it important they give their true address? Or what would be the purpose for them to do that?
When it comes to a formal public hearing that's required by state law, it would be important to give your full name and address, because you become part of a record that's an appeal. You're part of a class of people that can appeal an issue. In everyday public comment, it's less important because folks are welcome to use fake names or give fake addresses if they wish. There's no way that we're going to be able to verify it unless we are talking about a public hearing appealable issue. It's part of our rules, though, that if you wish to speak to the council, you come up and you identify yourself.
Right.
So I think it would be an appropriate question if the council wanted to know more about where exactly do you live? Are you a citizen of the city of Sumner? What is your full name?
Because it just bothers me that, we're just giving like just a street, and I just, to me, I'd like to, if they're going to identify themselves, that, say where you really live, or, be specific, not just, Parker or Sumner Avenue or whatever.
I actually like this one myself because most of the bad comments that we have had have been on not from people that are here. They've been on the phone or, remotely. So I kind of like this one. Andy?
I like numbers 2 and 3. I'm not a fan of the first item, the one about 24 hours. I think there's just quite a few people, if you were wanting to attend and all of a sudden you weren't able to make it, I think that's a long time. I think if it was like when people come here and they put their name on a list, they do it at the time the meeting starts. So I feel like I would be in favor of something like that. That could be later on, but I feel like I'm not comfortable with that, the 24 hours notice. I do like the idea of the accountability of the cameras on and the name and address. If there was an online function that Zoom had, that would be wonderful. If you could like type that in, and if you couldn't type it in, you couldn't get on the list. That'd be amazing. I don't know that there is, but that would be something I'd be supportive of. But I would rather have it something that they could do at the time of the meeting. So I just think 2 and 3 work well for me. Number 1, I don't like.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead, Carla.
I'm probably a tough nut on this one. I say, in my mind, if I am passionate about a topic, I will go there and I'll want to look at people. I would prohibit remote public comment entirely. I see people come in here, they have a lot of passion about the topics they want to talk about. To the mayor's point, their plight, they say what they have to say. I want to see the person. I want to know that they truly have a skin in the game when it comes to this city. A lot of people will say things differently if they're right here with a group versus on a computer, right? Now, if we were not to prohibit remote public comment, then I am definitely someone that would want to, I would go with all 3 of them, just to make sure that somebody that's signing in isn't, this is not official verbiage, some whack job that ties into these things and spews stuff, right? But I would want to see them up there and know that they're part of the city. I mean, that's my opinion though. I really think that people can come here. They know we're in here and come here and talk in person and make it a priority to have their opinion heard. So that's what I feel.
Anybody else? Barbara?
Does that go against a person's right to expression? You know, if we prohibit the public comment, because like right now, council members are allowed to attend hybridly. You know, we have the hybrid model. And so I just wonder if that would really fly if we prohibited remote comments entirely. And then the 24 hours is kind of a problem because really they would have to almost have their sign in or their registration in on Friday, because who's going to check on Sunday? You know, since we do meet on Monday. So I don't know whether, if that's a problem or how would that 24 hours be noted? Would it be by their email time that they, send, and who would they send a note to?
My understanding of the 24-hour pre-registration is that there's a function through the webinar system that would allow people to pre-register, but I'll double check on that. That's a really, really good question. It wouldn't be an email to the city clerk, for example.
Yeah.
It would be actually a form that you fill out to register to join the meeting and talk. To your first question, there is no state law that requires us to allow remote
There is
public comment.
okay.
And it's hard to remember pre-2020,
Yeah.
but the only requirement of the OPMA pre-2020, when Zoom became very popular, was to have a speakerphone in the middle of the meeting where the public could listen. So we've come a long way since then, and the law has changed a bit since then. In the case of an emergency, we have to allow remote access, but there is no state law that requires remote public comment. It is to the discretion of the council, and it's in the current version of the rules to allow it.
And I believe the school district does require registration.
Yes, they do.
like a day ahead.
Yeah, it's fairly common, I'd say. It's probably half and half.
Uh-huh.
Councilmember Brown?
I'm fine with remote, but not advanced registration.
You're fine with remote, but not advanced registration.
Thank you, Kurt.
So I really do think that we have to have remote public comments, mostly because, for accessibility issues. I think, there are a lot of people out there who can't maybe come in person. But I do also think that 24 hours advanced registration is way too long. I mean, too far in advance to do it. So I would vote for, and I don't know, maybe there's a reason for, you said other jurisdictions pretty much are using the 24 hours advanced registration. Is there a reason for that?
I can't tell you where the 24 hours came from, but all the pre-registration requirements that I've seen in other jurisdictions are using the 24-hour rule. Now, written public comments can be submitted to the city clerk up till 4 p.m. 4 p.m. on the date of the meeting. So that's another time deadline that council could consider if you're interested at all in a pre-registration requirement.
And I believe some of the registration time has to do with Zoom webinar requires us to send out a panelist link for them to be able to join the meeting. So there's some administrative time. Does that take 24 hours? No, but you also don't want to get that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and be struggling with it.
It's probably better suited for jurisdictions that don't have Monday meetings, honestly.
Right.
One thing I also just want to remind you, we're talking about public comment. So there's the public comment period, but a lot of these types of rules also apply to public that wishes to make comment on an item that's on the agenda. So this is one honestly that I've struggled with because I could make an argument both sides of this. But if you do have somebody that's attending the meeting virtually and they hear something on the agenda they didn't realize was on the agenda, now you basically said you can't comment without the 24 hours notice. That's a struggle, or at least a consideration that you need to consider.
I think in regards to just the virtual part, I think that the problem we have that I see is that people are not involved enough. So I really am reluctant to try to put a barrier for someone to be involved when I feel like we want to invite the public to, even if they're criticizing, to come in and talk to us. So that's my concern about the advance notice, is just, I think that we don't want to create barriers for people to get involved when there is not a need to do that.
Anybody else?
It's a lot of very good discussion. I appreciate everyone's feedback. I'm having a hard time figuring out what revisions we should propose, though. And council is always welcome to make amendments to whatever's being proposed or whatever ends up in the packet. I just want to make sure that what I heard from a majority is that we leave remote public comment. Numbers 2 and 3 seem to have pretty widespread support, a little bit less for number 1. But if we do number 1, it should be less than 24 hours.
I think you got it. I think that's pretty much.
Okay, we'll do our best. And like I said, we welcome amendments if it doesn't meet the council's needs.
Is everybody good with that?
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right. Doesn't want to stay on 4. There we go. Option number 4, specify either comments in writing or comments in person or virtual, not both. And the reason is because if somebody submits their public comment in writing, it becomes part of the meeting minutes. It's actually physically attached to the record. And as you all experience each week, those comments are forwarded to you. So you're aware of them prior to the meeting. There would be no reason then to have redundant comments orally that say exactly what the written comments already said. They both become part of the record. They're both identified in the meeting minutes. And the idea really is to have council hear the feedback from constituents and members of the public, but not necessarily twice.
So this one is pick one.
No, I just welcome feedback if this is a rule change that council is interested in visiting.
My opinion on this one is that even though it's annoying, I don't see a need to put a rule for it. I think sometimes in my mind, the email, if it's too long, it's hard for me to read the whole thing. So the 3 minutes actually sometimes gets me a little bit more attention. If it's a 6-page email, I might read 2 pages and I lose track of it. But I think that, so I don't mind the redundancy. It doesn't, it can be annoying, but not, it doesn't, to me, I don't see a need for a rule.
Anybody else?
I would agree with Andy on that. Especially some of the emails we get, it's hard to find the message in it, right? What's the key message that somebody might be trying to get across? Yet, when they come in and share, then I can get the message. So I think it's fine if we do both. You know, unless you can help me understand if there's an administrative issue with it. See what I'm saying? If there's no real administrative issue with it, it doesn't really make me drive one way or the other. I'm good with it.
Councilmember Cole?
No comment.
You're good? You're good.
So if there was a topic that was, had a lot of signups, then I would say if it's already been, sent to us in writing, then maybe those comments wouldn't need to do in, orally. If we saw that there's 20 people signed up for public comments, I don't know, there's a way to, edit what they're gonna say or not.
Well,
guess
back to Jason's comment earlier about suspending the rules and being flexible during a meeting if that particular fact pattern came up, but as it stands now, we wouldn't be able to distinguish between those that submitted in writing and those that are signed up to speak in person or virtually.
Councilmember Ranky?
Yeah, I know some people have done both. I put it in writing because I've read the emails and they come and speak at the podium for their 3 minutes. I guess for me, I like to put a face to the issue in their email, so I'm not opposed to having both. And I know it's a little redundant, but it's nice to see the person that is, bringing up the issue and wants to make some kind of comment on it. So I'm good with having both.
Okay.
Kurt, you
All right.
good with that?
So I don't think we'll, go ahead.
I don't mind the redundancy either, like the rest. I don't mind that.
Okay, we will make no rule change related to that.
Okay, so I just want to clarify it because what we're talking about here, because to me, it's saying whether or not it's a part of the record. So I could come in and I could speak and I could also submit something in writing, but we're just really determining what's a part of the record, right? So couldn't I do both? And we just have a rule that says maybe the oral segment trumps the written part, or, vice versa or something? I don't know.
Well, they
Am I-
both become part of the record, and the idea behind this proposed rule change or the discussion around it was efficiency. There's no administrative headache necessarily related to it. They'll all be captured by the meeting minutes, so one doesn't trump the other currently. They both count, they both constitute public comment, and even on formal public hearings, folks can submit their comments in writing or come during the public hearing section of the meeting. So it's been an option for years. It's always been this way. This was to prompt discussion about whether or not council wanted to change that.
Anybody else down there? Anybody down here? Okay.
Option 5, prohibit donating time to another speaker or sharing public comment time. We have experienced this in our council meetings, but what struck me is I've read many other jurisdictions' council rules, and ours was one of very few that doesn't have a rule about this. So ceding your time to others is addressed by a lot of local jurisdictions, and I think importantly, because what you don't want is for 3 minutes to become 9, 12, 15 because of compiling and donated time. That really does not allow the council to hear from each person that came to speak. So the proposed language on the screen is intended to address this issue, and I'm happy to hear your feedback.
I-
Okay,
No, I-
go ahead, Barbara.
I strongly believe that the person that is bringing up the issue should be the one presenting the, comments and not having it, because we have had where 2 or 3 people have read one person's comments, and yes, it goes, they're getting 9 minutes or 6 minutes of time. So I really think that the person making the comments be the one delivering them to us. And if they can't do that, then they can email, do the oral or the written comments.
Can I clarify? Because I think we're talking 2 separate things. You have the instances of where one person runs out of their 3 minutes and somebody else in the audience donates their time, and that person A continues talking up to 6 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever. You mentioned something slightly different, and that's I'm reading my public comments. The bell goes off, it's 3 minutes, and I hand them to Andrea and she finishes reading. Is there a desire, is your desire to also stop that practice? Or is it just to stop the seating, the donating of time?
I guess I don't really like the donating of time, and if I think a person can make their case in the 3 minutes, I think that's quite a bit of time. And so, in my opinion, I would prefer it just only have the 3 minutes and not, speak on somebody else or add it on to somebody's.
Where I couldn't give my time to Andrea to speak. Okay. So what was proposed?
I want to make one really quick comment about this room. It is set up to accommodate people who wish to stay in their seat and speak to the council if there's a disability or accessibility issue. And if somebody's nervous speaking to you in person, submitting written comment is a good alternative to that practice, so that donating time isn't a knee-jerk reaction to nerves, for example.
You mentioned that most jurisdictions have something like this in their rules. Can you elaborate and tell us what the range of things they have and what's most common, and a little bit more on what you've seen in other jurisdictions?
It's some version of this proposed language that you see up here. And the idea is not to allow cumulative, limited speaking time to add up. You could probably imagine a scenario where one person's at the podium and there's widespread support for what they're talking about, and time just continues to get donated, and 30, 40 minutes go by and one speaker's been at the podium all evening.
So is there any jurisdictions that have say they can seat up to 6 minutes total or something like that, where it's kind of a hybrid where you're allowing it but limiting it, or it's just kind of all or nothing?
I haven't seen that from any jurisdiction. I didn't read a single set of rules that allows the donation of time. It either explicitly prohibits it or it's silent like ours is.
Okay. Andrew, can you maybe speak to the challenge too with any sort of official public hearing and a seating of time?
Yeah, legally, this has consequences. You become part of a record for a formal public hearing or for an appealable issue if you participated in the hearing. And there are cases about what participation means, and merely being present at the meeting doesn't count. So donating your time could have legal consequences that are unintended. So a rule that just doesn't allow that practice will prevent those types of legal issues as well.
Okay, I'll finish my opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
I think my stance on it would be just that I would support prohibiting it, but I think we are allowing the redundancy so you can get a longer comment in writing and just summarize it, hopefully. So I'm okay with it. Sure.
Okay, Mr. Corrigan.
Yeah, I like that proposed language, and it kind of stops the filibuster type thing happening, can happen. So I agree with that.
So I'm wrestling with this one personally, because I know that these meetings are for the council to conduct city business. But also, it's an opportunity for us to hear from the people that voted us in, that we represent. So that's where I'm wrestling. I do think 3 minutes, somebody said something here though that I resonate with. 3 minutes is a nice amount of time for somebody to speak. But then also the writing or sending something in or emailing us would also be a way to kind of get us in front of it, right? So then it would give us an opportunity to really understand what somebody's talking to us about. So I could go with prohibiting donating the time as long as people know, the public knows there's other ways to communicate to us than just standing in here talking to us during a council meeting. I think that that's the key. I mean, I know people know, we tell them all the time, get online, send your comments in. We get emails all the time.
Right.
So I think people are aware, but I think people need to understand when we say this and buy into this, it's not that we don't want to hear what they have to say. That's the key for me. I want people to know that they should be letting us know what they feel. That's why we're here. People put us in this seat to represent, so. That's where I'm at on it. I could live with putting this in place. We just need to keep reminding people they have other ways to communicate to us.
All right. Are you good? You good? Anybody down here?
I'll just say, yeah, the number 5 option, I think, yeah, I'm not in favor of sharing the time. The individuals want to talk. They should say what they want to say and not read someone else's, comments or opinion. So, I'm good with the language the way it is on this, for not sharing it this time. And I've actually seen recently at several meetings where they've tried it and they do not allow it. I know Tacoma, Pierce County, I've wording all of them pretty much. So I think it's pretty common now that most places do not have it where they let them share their time. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I'm not in favor on sharing someone's minutes, but having someone read your comments for you because of a handicap should be permitted.
Yep.
Always would be.
All right.
Okay, thank you. This clicker does not let me do it. This is the last sort of option, a buffet of options that we wanted to discuss with you tonight, a specific ask at least. Moving public comment, currently it is the first item on new business. And that's intentional. It's because often we don't want the public to have to sit through a very long, drawn-out council meeting. Back in the day, Sumner City Council meetings went for 3+ hours. We've since put some confines on that, on how many items go on each agenda in an attempt to keep them efficient and shorter. But public comment is one of the first items on the agenda. Something to consider is moving it to the end. This one is one that Jason and I have both wrestled with even bringing before you, because I think it punishes really well-intentioned, good members of the public that want to come speak. It has an added benefit of, you've all experienced it. Some folks will come, they will comment, and then they leave promptly, and they aren't sitting through the council's business to educate themselves on what's going on at the meeting. But it is tough on folks who wish to come speak to the council and don't have a whole lot of time to stay for the whole meeting. What it does do, though, is it disincentivizes these true Zoom bombers, because I'm quite certain that sitting through an entire meeting for the Sumner City Council from somewhere across the United States is probably not high on their list. So this is for discussion purposes only, and I don't have any proposed language, just wanted some feedback.
Who wants to go first? Okay.
So I don't like that. I would like, if I were speaking, I'd want to have it right at the beginning so that I could come in, talk about whatever it is I was interested in and leave if I wanted to leave. If I don't have enough time, and a lot of people people don't have a lot of time, I would not want to have to sit through the entire agenda in order to be able to be heard.
I'm all in favor of disincentivizing Zoom bombers, but I do not like this solution. So if there's most ideas, but if it disincentivizes genuine people in the public who are trying to come and be a part of the meeting, I'm not a fan. But I like the intent of it. I don't like the practice of it.
Councilmember Bowman.
This is great. I actually like this because I want people to come into the meetings. I understand the time element, but I want them to come in and really get involved in their city and listen to what's going on, you know? And so I understand, you know, technology, and I'm on Zoom calls with people around the world myself at times. It drives me insane. I like to get a feel for the people, and I like this. So I understand what's being said, but I would want them to come on in and, you know, hear everything that's being said, learn about things like what the police talked about tonight, and then make their comments, you know, make their comments. And the other thing they could do is they could come in the meeting late. There's nothing that says that door closes at 6 o'clock, right? You can see the agenda. You can see kind of what's going on. If you got to phone a friend, if you got a friend in here that, you know, just kind of text or get online and watch it. And if you're 5 minutes down the road, you drive up here. So I like this one myself. And it does. Somebody that's over in Europe is not gonna, or on the East Coast, doesn't want to stay up to midnight just to create havoc in our lives. You know, they're going to target the ones that are more timely for them, I believe, but that's just me. So sorry, you guys. I know you're trying to figure it out. I like it.
Member Clerget.
Undecided.
Member Votto.
What if you put it before consent agenda?
Right in the very, very beginning.
That actually was brought up a couple years ago as an option. So yeah, I was gonna mention that.
If we're gonna go to the end.
Go in the middle.
It would be to get it up to the front, so.
So the argument a few years ago was if you move it to the beginning, then the public can hop in right away, kind of the Deputy Mayor Cole's statement.
Yeah.
Public can come in right away and make their comments if it's not on the agenda, right? And then not take up any more of their time.
I mean, but to me, I don't think having it at the end is very good. So, I mean, at least in the middle, I mean, it's right after consent agenda and we're still fresh. And so we're hearing what people are saying, because if it is a long meeting at 8 o'clock, it's gonna be, you know, that's when I'm gonna have to start listening to 30 or 40 minutes of public comment. I don't think that'll be very effective for me.
We'll wake you up.
I think it's just the snoring.
Councilmember Ranky.
I guess my thoughts on it are, yeah, I mean, I'd like to disincentivize the Zoom people, but I think it's very few and far between. And I don't like to restrict the citizens that come in and talk. Unfortunately, the reality of it is most people don't want to come and listen to all this stuff about potholes and contaminated soil and whatever else. They want to come and make their comments and leave. So I mean, that's what most of the people do. So I'm kind of, I don't know, not a big fan of it right now. If we had a big issue with it, I just don't think, since I've been around recently, I haven't seen a lot of Zoom. I don't think we've had Zoom calls that I've seen, but that's just my thoughts on it right now. And as far as moving in the agenda somewhere else up or after the consent agenda, maybe that'll help some, but I'm fine with where it's at right now. Thank you.
Thank you. So Member Brown.
I'm fine for where it is placed right now.
All right.
And while we've got the rules open, this is sort of an open invitation to suggest or propose or discuss any other rule changes you might want to talk about. I've listed a couple here that I've heard talked about briefly or mentioned in passing over the years. Require in-person attendance for all council members. You're all here today. The rules currently allow and permit remote attendance if that is in lieu of missing the meeting. right? If you can come to the meeting remotely, great. If you're just doing it out of convenience, the rule would prohibit that. So just open discussion about whether or not there's any appetite to change this.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Clerget. He's shaking his head.
I got nothing to add.
Councilmember Bowman.
I don't really have any issues with anything. I do think that, I mean, service animals are allowed today, right?
Service animals are absolutely allowed. I should put more context around this bullet point. What some jurisdictions are experiencing are disruptive service animals, so putting rules in place to address that. And then what's happening more and more with service animals is members of the audience are allergic. And so figuring out procedural ways to accommodate both and making sure we have an area for service animals and an area where those that might be highly allergic can be separate, but also attend and watch. Even a separate viewing area has been batted around in other jurisdictions. So this is not at all a suggestion that they're not allowed, because they are welcome for anyone that needs a service animal that falls under the definition of an actual service animal. But this is more about procedural ways to address them.
I think we might want to do that. I mean, just because, I mean, you just don't know, you know? But as far as in-person attendance, if I can't, for me personally, if I can't be here, I can't be here. I'm either on a plane or I'm doing something that I can't be here, and I give advance notice. If I'm homesick, I'm probably not gonna have my wherewithal to log in, you know, I mean, I need to take a nap. I'm not gonna be listening and giving opinion on something or voting when I could be more of a endangerment than a positive, you know? So for me, and just going with the ones that you have up here, I think that the time is fine for me.
6 p.m.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm flexible, but I think it's a good time. It allows people to get home from work, allows people in the community to get here. I think if we go much later, Barb has stated 8 o'clock is her golden hour. We'll be done. So
Yes.
I know we're getting close. So I think
Somewhat regularly, we hear that it conflicts with dinner time or after school activities and that kind of thing. So it's at least worth discussing.
yeah, I'm fine with discussing it, but I mean, you know, Andy's the one that's got kids, that he's having to take them to all these things. And I mean, and I could see where it would be hard, right? When you got kids. I mean, do you miss their activities and stuff?
Yes.
So, you know, and you know, I mean this because I love you to death, but you also wanted to do this. So you know that we're here and we know.
For the record, I asked their permission if I could do this.
See?
I got a unanimous vote.
Exactly. So I mean, you kept your priorities straight. You asked your family. So I mean, it's, you know, I'm probably good either way. You know, I'll roll with whatever we decide to do up there.
On the in-person attendance, I am a little bit torn. I don't really want to consider it to be the same as in-person. I really do want to disincentivize virtual attendance. I think it's being restricted, so I'm not sure I have a really strong opinion how to fix that, but I do want, if we had somebody who got on the council and they were like only attending virtually because they were burned out, that would be disappointing, and I wouldn't want that to be a normal accepted behavior. I would want it to be the exception rather than the rule. So I'm not sure, like, I know, I'm looking at this, it says that 3 consecutive meetings. I don't know if there's a way to make it so the virtual attendance was a little bit disincentivized, but not prohibited. Or maybe it requires an excused if it's more than a few times or something. I don't know. I feel like I've attended virtually, and I think there's some meetings where it's nice to be able to be a part of it, even if you're out of town, because I am going to be traveling a little more. I have a little more business in another state. So, so I don't know if that helps at all, but that's my view on it, is that I think we don't have anybody here currently who seems to be doing that, but I think I would see it problematic if we had somebody who was consistently not being in person.
So just as a reminder, Council Rule 13.4 says that you're encouraged to attend all required meetings in person, but shall have the option to attend any meeting virtually, and virtual attendance is the same as in person. Prior to this rule, it was more subjective. It was, you need to be here in person unless it meant you were going to miss the meeting, then you could attend virtually. So it did have some differentiation. Going back to that time, it was really hard to enforce, right? Because, you know, first of all, it's not staff or the mayor's job to enforce the council rules. It's the council that enforces the rules upon themselves. So then it's you all trying to determine, well, should this council member have been in the meeting in person, or was their excuse to be virtual good enough? And that's a hard position, I think. You know, if I was in your shoes, that'd be a hard decision to make. So we're open to suggested language, to find a way to make that happen, or go back to the previous language or this language, but neither one is perfect.
Yeah, I think something similar to 13.2A would work for me in that, which is just deals with the idea of if you multiple without being excused. Like, I think being excused is, to me, I like that idea of being excused. If you're consistently doing it. So, and then on the service animals, I'll just jump into that real quick. I think I support Councilmember Bowman. I think it'd be nice to have something written in there, but I don't mean to jump to the next one if there's a question on that, but I think I do support something similar to the 13.2A for the virtual attendance.
Just so everybody understands, 13.2A talks about attending 3 consecutive regular meetings without being excused from the council. So Mr. Elfrich, are you saying that you would want council to retroactively approve that virtual attendance? So for example, if you were
Requested in advance.
yeah, either request in advance, or alternatively, if you attended virtually at the next regular council meeting, your council members would need to
Make a motion
to say, yes, that meeting counted.
yeah, I would say that yes, that you're essentially getting a motion to excuse you from in-person attendance at the meeting or something similar to that. That would be something that I think would work. If there's problems with that, I'm open to other ways to do it.
But when somebody like Andy has attended virtually, he's usually been recognized by the mayor that he's in attendance. So I think, it's when you're not, when you haven't notified the staff that you're gonna be gone, or, that's when you're, the unexcused, but in general, we're all have given notice that we're gonna be gone and have excused absences, so I think I don't think that, usually applies when, because you've been virtually 2 or 3 times and, and, we've always recognized that Andy's on, phone, so. But I know like at previous council, when there were at least 2 or 3 that did not come to meetings, and it was, I'm always surprised when I walk in and, it's a full house, and it makes it much easier to know that we're working together with our business decisions than, well, we haven't seen so-and-so for a month or 2 months, that's where I think maybe not a hard fast rule that you're required to be in person, but I think it's just beneficial to the whole council.
I agree with Barbara. Having in-person council members makes a huge difference. It's better conversation and the meetings flow so much better, so I agree with Barbara there.
And then as far as start time, when we had like study sessions were at 7 and councils were at 6, meetings, having consistent times. And then like our committees are pretty good about looking at each person, like, does this work for your schedule? And then for service animals, so what are the service animals that are allowed? Because I hear there's dogs, there's mini horses, but
Monkeys.
No, those are the only 2
There's-
accepted.
yeah, so, it's, so far we haven't had that issue, and I haven't really seen anybody from the public bring a service animal, but, I think they just need to be well behaved, or, if they're causing troubles, then they should be excused.
Okay, thank you.
You good, Jason?
Unless anybody else has.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I don't like the idea of in-person attendance only. I think I'm the only person who actually works full-time. And while I am pretty much here all the time, I'm sure there may be an occasion sometime in the future where I can't make it. Like, I actually don't go into the office on Mondays because I want to make sure. The one time I did, my train was hit, and I was late. So, anyways, so I don't do that any longer. But you never know when there might be a need. So I would, and I'm sure there'll be other people who work full-time who are on the council. So I think that it would be in their interest to be able to attend virtually if possible. Start time to me works okay for now. I'd be open to any other options if others were interested in doing that. As far as service animals, I'd like the idea of adopting rules, but I do want to confirm that we have a rule about just pets not being allowed in here.
Okay. We don't
I'm
currently. have
afraid of
that, but-
dogs, so I'm always looking out for them. Thank you.
Councilmember Frankie.
Well, I'll just say a couple things, I guess. I prefer the in-person also, I think as most of us do. For me, it's more technical issue. I'm not into Zoom. I've never Zoomed anything in my life. I don't know if I could do it. So, and I'm more in person. I think it flows better, like the mayor says, and just for continuity of everything, it's easier to just talk about things in person. Start time, I'm good. I'm retired, of course, so I don't have any issues with times, days, or anything like that. Service animals I'm good with, and I don't really have any issues with anything, times or the in person, good.
Wow. Councilmember Brown.
Attending by Zoom should continue to be accepted. There may be times where getting to the chambers may be difficult, but attending through Zoom would be possible. I believe attending in person is best though.
There we go.
Should we go back?
Yeah, if I could make a recommendation, we'll go back and pull the language from before this version, which is weighted heavily on, please be here in person, but if you can't make it, virtual is okay.
Perfect.
And so it's a little bit more restrictive than this outright permissive language into 13.4. So we plan on taking your feedback tonight, getting the red line version updated and bringing it back to you for review before you consider it.
And there are some other procedural cleanups that you'll see in red line, like rules around going into an executive session and clarifying that ordinances are on new business, other red lines on issues we didn't specifically address tonight. But we'll go back and incorporate your feedback for the next meeting.
Thank you.
So I just, does the city use Teams for all your business? So, does it matter that you use Zoom or Teams? I just wonder if those terminologies need to be used or what.
So for the city, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so we already included in our rules that it's Zoom or equivalent virtual platform.
Yeah.
We have explored using Teams for these meetings and chose to stay with a Zoom webinar because that's some additional features that our standard Teams license doesn't have. But we do have the flexibility of, if it's Zoom today and in 2 months, the next big thing comes out that works even better, we have that flexibility to switch without coming back to you for the
Okay.
rules.
That's good.
All right.
Thank you.
One more comment? Okay.
On the pets, I just was curious since we haven't done anything before. I know in the housing realm, there's like an emotional support animal. Is that something we can prohibit and just make it service animals? Or I don't know how that is. I know there's a lot of, the pet thing is kind of an odd thing that's really become a big deal. So I'm hoping we can just make it people that need them.
Yeah.
So you can't bring.
Yeah,
your
we can
chicken.
use the same definition that's used to define service animal in state law as the guideline.
And I didn't mention the time, but the time works fine. And then I did want to mention that on the committees that I was able to change the time because I did have a little bit of issue with like multiple days a week having like 6 o'clock meetings. So I think, so anyways, thank you.
I just say one last thing.
Sure.
We're getting close.
Um,
Someone's going to-
I'm hurrying. I would just on the in-person attendance thing, I would be curious to see the other verbiage, but I think Andy just really hit on it. It's just like if we're not gonna be here, we notify, the mayor and like CC Jason or something. It's a courtesy thing. That's all it is. It's courtesy. So then it can be excused or not, and we might have to shift things around on the agenda. I mean, if we all decided if we all got sick and we had to remote in or not attend, I mean, it just allows for planning. So I do like what you pointed out on that 13.2, but it's a courtesy. So maybe just simple verbiage around that.
No,
Thanks.
that's a great suggestion. That would help us. Room setup.
All right, I want to thank all the council members for their good input tonight. You guys did great, so hopefully they can make something out of it and we can come on time and stay for the party. So I will move on to city administrator report.
Just two things. First off, reminder that we have 5 Mondays this month, so no meeting next week. Enjoy your Monday off. And the other thing is, just remember, we have our last Music Off Main that's at Heritage Park. This Friday, it's James Coates. We'll also have another concert at Loyalty Park, August 12th, and that's Linda, which is an Earth, Wind and Fire group. So that's on, it's partnered with our Chamber Festival as well.
All right, thank you. Agenda setting, council meeting. Anybody have any issues with council meeting?
So I plan.
You just got back.
I know. Well, I plan to join remotely from California on the 5th.
Okay,
But if I can't get internet, then I
Fifth.
may need an excuse.
okay. Anybody else? All right,
Can I just make one little correction about the last concert, August 10th?
I will believe you that the 10th is Friday. So
Yeah. Yes.
I couldn't remember. That was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Believe you, then.
And then just, can you just confirm also that whether it's Heritage Park or Loyalty Park, because the website says Heritage Park.
The one on the 10th of August is
Mhm.
at Loyalty Park.
That's what it says on the card.
Yeah,
Okay, and the website is. says
I
something
will
different.
check the
Okay.
website.
All right, thank you.
Here's one in front.
committees. Anybody have any committee issues? None? All right. And no executive session tonight? All right, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:57.